Shalom all. There's a lot of news for us to cover in the region. We're going to talk today about Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Iran, Gaza, Turkey, a whole bunch of stuff. So let's get started. Gaza. This weekend, Israeli authorities confirmed the recovery of 2 hostages from Gaza, marking a somber development amid ongoing tensions. On Friday, the body of Elan Weiss, a 55-year-old Kibbutz Be'eri emergency team member abducted during the October 7 attacks, was recovered and identified. His wife and daughter were also taken hostage, but were released alive earlier. In a complex rescue operation, the IDF orchestrated the retrieval of the remains of a second hostage, later identified on Saturday as Elan Steivi, a 28-year-old volunteer photographer at the Nova Music Festival, who was helping others escape when he was abducted. And with these recoveries, Israeli officials report that Israel has returned 207 hostages, of them 148 living, and unfortunately 48 hostages remain in Gaza, of whom only approximately 20 are believed to be alive. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated his unwavering commitment to bringing all hostages home, alive or deceased. According to Reuters, this is the next story, Abu Obeda, the masked and widely recognized spokesperson of Hamas's military wing, the Izzadin al-Qassam Brigade, was confirmed killed in an Israeli airstrike on August 30th, 2025, that is, Friday, in the Rimal neighborhood of Gaza City. Palestinian sources told Al Arabiya that the strike hit an apartment with Abu Obeda's family and Hamas commanders, later identifying his body. Abu Obeda, whose name is off-screen Hudayfa Samir Abdullah al-Kalut, became an iconic figure in Hamas's media strategy, frequently appearing with red keffiyeh and a mask to conceal his identity. He first started his career in 2002 during the Second Intifada. On a side note, that's when I finished my mandatory military service, and rose to prominence after being officially appointed as the group's spokesperson following the 2005 Gaza disengagement. The IDF stated that steps were taken to minimize civilian casualties, including precision munitions, aerial surveillance, and intelligence tracking. It's worth noting that a few months ago, Abu Obeda's brother was taken into custody by the IDF, so who knows what information was gleaned due to that. But it's possible that what we saw on Friday was a result of that detention. This weekend, the IDF confirmed the killing of Muhammad Abd al-Aziz Abu Bedia, who served as the head of ISIS Palestine district, operating across the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the Sinai Peninsula. He is responsible for planning operations, including and coordinating combat actions against IDF troops, and facilitating weapon and funding transits into Gaza. So with his passing, his unfortunate early demise, ISIS Palestine has significantly been weakened by its highest ranking operative being deceased. Yay! Now, before we go into Yemen and Iran, let's give some additional information about the events last week in Syria. Multiple Israeli papers, such as the Jerusalem Post, Israel Hayom, and the Times of Israel, reported that multiple Israeli sources revealed that the raid included the dismantlement of Turkish surveillance devices planted near Damascus in a Syrian airbase that there was concern that would be used by Turkey and the new Syrian regime, because these devices were designed to monitor Israeli activity. The equipment has been installed in this Syrian airbase over a decade ago, and the IDF's objective was to neutralize these intelligence assets, preventing their exploitation by the Syrian authorities and other actors. Now, Jerusalem reportedly warned the new Syrian regime against aligning with Ankara, accusing it of playing with fire. In response, Turkey said that it was closing its airspace to Israeli flights. Later, it clarified that it was closing it for government and military flights only. This, of course, highlights the increased tensions between the regional powers, Israel and Turkey, especially in Syria, but not limited to just that zone. As the situation in Gaza has caused tensions to spike, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the dictator of Turkey, who's been Turkey's top politician since 2003 in two roles, the prime minister and president, that have changed, the powers of these roles have changed, each to be the most powerful role, while he, Erdogan, held that position, has condemned Israel and Netanyahu as war criminals committing genocide in Gaza. In response, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recognized the Armenian genocide, marking the first time an Israeli Prime Minister has done so. In an interview to a podcast with Patrick Ben David, Netanyahu was directly asked why Israel had not officially recognized the Armenian genocide. And he, Netanyahu, replied, "I just did." He stated his personal recognition of the genocide during that exchange, but it does not have any binding effect on Israel, its government, or parliament. And even if it did, I don't think it would have much of an effect that would be relevant internationally and is basically declarative. All right, let's move on to Yemen. Very, very interesting stuff going on there. On August 30th, 2025, Israeli airstrike in Sana'a killed Ahmed al-Jahawi, the prime minister of the Houthi-led government, along with dozens of senior figures, ministers, government ministers, generals, and so on. The operation targeted a high-level gathering Israel called an intelligence precision strike. I just read today about the lieutenant colonel who oversaw the mission. It was her last day of service. So what a way to go out. That's like going out with a bang. Now let's see. Who was killed and who remained alive? So Houthi officials say that several ministers have died. Apparently, many are still buried and it's difficult to confirm identity. But the reports differ on whether Defense Minister Muhammad al-Atifi or the Chief of Staff Muhammad al-Gamare were hit. Apparently, the Chief of Staff was not, later report said, but in any case, at minimum, their status remains somewhat unclear. Immediately after, Deputy Prime Minister Muhammad Musta was tasked with carrying out the Prime Minister's duties. Now, unfortunately, the movement's core leadership, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, the supreme leader, and Mahdi al-Mashat, head of the Supreme Political Council, remain in place, were not at the meeting, are unharmed. In addition to them, many officers and other army figures were killed, and the death toll seems to be above 50. Now let's see what likely effects this might have. Operational effects. Removing a figurehead prime minister is symbolically significant, but unlikely to paralyze command and control. The Houthis have a redundant security-hardened hierarchy with short-term disruption may occur in governments' portfolios like energy, information, foreign affairs, but not much more than that on the battlefield. Military retaliation. The Houthis vowed revenge, so we can expect drone and cruise ballistic missile salvos towards Eilat, the Negev, possibly a little bit farther north, and renewed harassment of the Red Sea shipping, tactics they've used since 2023. And in response, Israel has reinforced air defense in anticipation. But within Yemen's civil war, the strike does not change the frontline balances. The Houthis still controlled Sana'a and much of the northwest. Their domestic rivals, the internationally recognized government, which is backed by the UAE and the Southern Transitional Council, are unlikely to gain territory solely because of this leadership decapitation. The Houthis' retaliatory death threats against Prime Minister Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Defense Katz is another option. The Houthis made these threats to assassinate them, but their capability inside Israel is not credible and is largely rhetoric. On Sunday, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that this is only the beginning, and they will reach all of the leaders of the Houthis. Usually, one would say that is nothing more than rhetoric, but earlier, before the strike, Israel Katz had said that the fate of Yemen will be like the fate of Iran, and that they had a plague of darkness when Israel hit some of the electrical infrastructure in Yemen, and next will come a plague of the firstborn, which of course indicated this strike. He alluded to it as well after the strike on the leadership. Now, in the aftermath of this attack, Israel's government met in a secure location on Sunday and is expecting some type of a more than usual response due to the exceptional nature of Israeli strike. It is even possible that Iran will try to assist somehow beyond, of course, their long-running arming of the Houthi rebels. And in relation to the possible attacks on shipping lanes, a report was lodged on Sunday of an attack on an Israeli-owned Liberian-flagged ship in the Red Sea off the coast of Saudi Arabia. Though no damage was caused to the ship or harm to the crew, it was reported that a splash from a projectile was seen. And this fits within the expected pattern of Houthi options, but time will tell. On Sunday, Yemeni internationally recognized government minister Muhammad al-Eryani posted on X that the Houthis have started a massive operation to kidnap and jail UN workers and humanitarian aid workers in Sana'a and Hodeidah, and that he has called on the international actors to move their compounds to the temporary capital of Aden for their own safety. Now, I looked into this a little bit, and it seems that there have not been any new kidnappings, but that over 24 UN workers are being held in prison by the Houthis, who started the practice of kidnapping them in 2021. So there you go on that. Now let's move on to Iran. There have been numerous reports of economic hardships in Iran over the past 2 months, including water shortages in Tehran and other shortages. Now, I'm not sure if this is a change from before the June war or more of the same and just being highlighted by media outlets who want to either push an agenda of Iran suffering under sanctions or that the Ayatollah regime is about to collapse. However, recent news regarding Iran is that on August 28th, the E3, the compromise in France, Britain, and Germany, informed the UN that the snapback mechanism for the 2015 UN Security Council sanctions will officially start its 30-day countdown until implementation. The interesting fact about this is that this snapback system for sanctions can only be delayed or stopped with a new security vote, but that can easily be vetoed by any of the members of the Security Council. On other Iran-related news, Australia has expelled the Iranian ambassador, citing credible intelligence linking Iran, the Republican Guard, to orchestrated anti-Semitic arson attacks within Australia. And in response, it executed a rare diplomatic expulsion, froze embassy operations, and moved to blacklist the IRGC. And then, Australia suspended its operations of its embassy in Tehran and evacuated its diplomatic staff. For security reasons, of course, so that they wouldn't be kidnapped, like the Iranian hostages after the revolution of the U.S. Embassy. But anyways, let's move a little bit closer back to Lebanon. The United Nations voted last week to terminate UNIFIL, United Nations International Forces in Lebanon's mandate at the end of 2026. Not a bad decision, considering they do nothing but disrupt the IDF operations and protect terrorists, who they allow to have bases and stockpiles close to their facilities. The move is meant to motivate and advance a situation where the actual country, the state of Lebanon, is responsible for the area instead of the UN, Israel, or Hezbollah. Now, we mentioned in recent weeks that Lebanon's government has requested that the army present by the end of August a plan on how to disarm Hezbollah by the end of 2025. I haven't yet seen that report, but I'm guessing it will come out somewhat soon, and parts of it at least will be public. Now, this move is hailed by Israel and international powers as a positive step. That said, there are reports that Hezbollah is actually stabilizing and growing under the keen watch of the Lebanese army. Something completely not surprising considering how deeply embedded they are within the army, within Lebanon as a whole. On Saturday night and continuing into Sunday, Israel bombed Hezbollah's infrastructure in South Lebanon and also killed some a Hezbollah terrorist on Sunday afternoon, and they are blaming Hezbollah for endangering local populations by continuing their attempts to build up their forces south of the Litani River. Israel dropped leaflets in the area for the civilian population saying just that. And finally, let's go back to Gaza. The Washington Post reported on a special meeting at the White House last week that related to Gaza's post-war future. There was a 38-page post-war plan dubbed the Riviera of the Middle East. It envisions Gaza under a U.S.-led trusteeship for at least 10 years, aiming to transition the region into a high-tech and tourism hub. The plan proposes voluntary or temporary relocation of Gaza. 2 million residents either abroad or to secured zones during the reconstruction. Gazans who choose to relocate could receive a $5,000 cash payment, 4 years of rent subsidies, and 1 year of food aid. Additionally, landowners would be given digital redevelopment tokens in exchange for property rights. These tokens could be used to fund a new life elsewhere or be redeemed for housing in future AI-powered smart cities in Gaza. The plan's financial model, developed by Israeli entrepreneurs and the Boston Consulting Group, BCG, suggests it required no U.S. government funding, relying instead on private and public investment through the Gaza Reconstitution, Economic Acceleration, and Transformation Trust, also known, probably made by Donald Trump, the Great Trust. Proposals include building AI-driven smart cities, resorts, industrial zones, and advanced infrastructure with initial security provided by private contractors and third country nationals, eventually transferring to local forces over a decade. The White House meeting was chaired by President Trump, attended by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and Jared Kushner. Though no policy decisions were announced publicly, Witkoff had described the administration's planning as very comprehensive. So to summarize all of that, in essence, the plan proposes a radical redevelopment model for Gaza, transforming it into a tech tourism enclave under U.S. leadership, and offers the residents include relocation incentives and subsidies, but also unsubsidized and without initiative relocation to security zones and potential housing in modern smart cities. The scheme, quote unquote, is designed to be self-financing according to private sector-led projections. High-profile figures attended the meeting, but no public commitments or decisions have yet been released. Obviously not. And anything that involves Gaza has to be done very carefully to stop the random radical left opposition. Now, we're nearing the end, and I haven't yet asked you to like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that stuff. But I just want to tell you that in our next episode, I hope, if nothing more pressing happens, to give an update and details on the current situation with the Druze in Syria that isn't as good as one might hope. So that's it for now, and keep praying for the soldiers, the hostages, the leadership of Israel, and us here at Netivyah. God bless you all, and shalom.